So we'll start again. Sarah Glazer, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you, Thomas?
Good. I'm doing amazing. And, one of the things that I want to start out with is I didn't even realize that, like, 10 years ago, when I first got into the union, I
Oh,
worked on a show with you
it was
in a
12 years
roundabout
ago.
way. 12 years ago
Yeah,
now.
we did that in 2007.
Holy cow. Wow, that's crazy. Well, it was a show called Black Dynamite, and man, for me, it was one of the first experiences that I had working in the union. It was one of the first day plays that I did. I worked
Yeah.
with Steve Morantz, and it was a second unit day for you.
It was additional photography. We'd already wrapped principal
Okay.
photography, and it was by the end of the shoot, and they just want. I think it was like 3 green screen days or something, but with pretty much a skeleton crew and not at full rate and all that sort of thing. So and it was during the holidays and whatnot, from my memory. So
What's a skeleton crew for anybody in the
sorry.
audience that doesn't know what that is?
So
Because remember, Video Mantis is obviously for,
sure, sure,
bridging
sure,
the gap
sure,
between students and
sure.
professionals.
This was the film Black Dynamite, which I
Mm.
think we mentioned. But so we'd already shot principal photography, which is when you the meat of it, essentially, when you're actually shooting it, and then and that's usually where you've got your full crew. And additional units if you need them. So that's your full camera crew with your DP, your operator, first AC, your second AC, your loader. This was back we were shooting film, so this was back then. It was film, and that film was done on a DAT recorder with 2 booms and no wires.
Wow.
So that was back in those days.
A DAT recorder.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
It was basically a mono mix, man. So that is literally, the production sound mix that is just leveled and EQ'd, mixed in.
Where have we come from? Jesus, that's amazing. Like
Yeah.
now in
That was
2019, we have all of our ISO tracks and
that was
everything else.
the last time I think we'd done that prior, except for some of the exceptions that are still going on today, like the people that are shooting film, like the Quentin Tarantinos and the Nolan brothers and all
Yeah,
that. But
the purists.
the purists, but they're still wiring and everything. But this was debut, and I remember when we did that, it was supposed to be one camera, and then the last minute they're like, "No, it's 2 cameras," and I had to get a second slate. But
Like,
it was
what?
it was literally like one of the last of the old school era.
Yeah, before it transitioned,
Sure.
Wow.
But yeah, no. So there'd been some additional just green screen stuff with the stock footage behind that they wanted to pick up, and so we didn't. We were called for that, but because of certain things, we chose not to do those 2 days. I think it was during the holidays too, when we were going out of town or whatnot.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I guess they got Steve Morantz, and he brought you in, and so you guys did the couple days on that.
Right.
And I didn't even find out who did it till later. I just found
That's
out
too
you
funny.
were there. I
Yeah,
knew Steve did it.
exactly.
I had no idea.
That's so
you
funny.
know.
I would have called you and talked about it,
Sure.
That's
yeah.
great.
But
Well, before we get into more about Black Dynamite, because I can tell we're gonna go on this one. This is gonna be a good one.
Film. It's
Absolutely.
like literally somebody. It's the one that, with everything else on the resume. Literally the other day, like a director was like, "Dude, Black Dynamite,
Black Dynamite.
not Westworld."
Black Dynamite. Yeah, absolutely. I'm telling you. And Westworld as well. So
Yeah, but
we've
it's
got a
like-
lot to talk about. Let's start with just talking about you. How did you get into sound? Let's talk a little bit more about you so everybody can just, know the Sarah that I know.
So I my family didn't support like music or anything like that, and I always wanted music lessons. They were a sports family, so none of that happened. But then, so I discovered the radio and was listening to things, music late at night. And then I went off to college and started spending my money on music instead of food, as you
Yeah.
do.
Of course,
And got into bootleg tape trading. And this was, guys, this is text-based internet. Okay,
Yeah.
there was no World Wide Web. There was
Yeah.
no pictures to click on. I mean, we're old.
Yeah.
And so I would get on the boards, and big fan of the Allman Brothers and a lot of the 70s things, and vinyl and reading notes and stuff. So I was doing my research. It wasn't research. It was just, following my passion, where you're reading liner notes and you go, you played on this album with these bands, and you start tracking all the musicians as you do. And then you start tracking what studios they were at and who were the engineers on the albums. And then Allman Brothers has a very strong fan base, very tight-knit community. It's akin to the Dead, but different. And a lot of them are in music and are in recording. And so Allman Brothers always supported bootleg tape trading, because that's how they built their fan base off tape
Yeah.
trading. A lot of the bands early on did. And so the bootlegs, somebody taping their show would travel across country, and they'd start at Fillmore West in San Francisco. By the time they got to New York, everybody knew who they were, and they were sold out. And that's what happened to Elmer. So they always
That's
supported
amazing.
that fan base. Plus, there are certain bands like the Dead, like the Allman Brothers, and nowadays probably Fish, and a couple others that are. Dave Matthews was also one that spread through tape trading.
Yep.
Um,
Everybody had a mixtape of that.
Everybody
Yep.
did, because the live shows were so amazing, and not everybody could afford to make an album. And the live, things happen in the studio. Some bands are better, and some are just like, no, you need the live experience.
Yeah.
So in college with music, I started going on these boards, and we would seed tape trees, is what we'd call them. So you'd get the Betty boards, which came out, which is actually one of the female engineers who was in the Grateful Dead camp.
Right.
And her soundboard patches were super clean. And so she would get those out, and all of a sudden there was a fresh injection of Betty boards. And you could get a soundboard patch and a DAT clone, and then you'd use that to seed a tree, and first generation, second generation cloning, and then you would do that. And so you'd get to the people with the best machines and cleans, and so you could,
Yeah.
not have loss in generation. So I'm getting into this world in college, and I'm sitting there on these text-based boards, reading everything, and the guys seeding the trees, because they're all guys, were half of them were engineers who'd worked at Wally Hyder or Capricorn or Muscle Shoals or wherever, and so they all had stories. They're sitting there shooting the shit, trading war stories, and I'm sitting there eavesdropping and learning how to align a tape machine from
Yeah.
reading a board.
Yeah.
And it was just a different world to me, and I loved the stories. I loved all that. I always wanted to be, in the studio, so that like when the magic happened, I could just like be there and be a part of it. I was never one who wanted to be, a lot of things. I didn't want to be spotlight and on the stage, and I like having like a personal life and stuff like that. So
For sure.
plus I didn't play an instrument, so there's that.
Yeah.
And I was actually thinking about
The studio is your instrument.
well, but I didn't know that. I was going to be an art major, and I
Yeah.
was going to make posters, because I also collected the Fillmore posters. I was going to be rock and roll art posters.
Oh, that's
what I was
awesome.
actually thinking of doing. And
That's
so
a
I was
good
gonna do-
side gig,
I
by
was
the
like,
way.
I was like, oh, I'll do rock and roll art posters as a career.
That's cool.
And instead, I chose sound. So,
Well, yeah, it happens, right?
you're like, okay, where are we going?
Yep, exactly.
So a friend of mine was like, all you ever talk about is music. All my friends are musicians. We were always analyzing the mix. I just still didn't even know this was a career.
Mhm.
And she literally knew of the program at UCLA, the recording engineering one, and took me down there and put the catalog in my hand. And I, left college and went to that in September, and I enrolled in the certificate programs for recording engineering, music business, and songwriting.
Oh, great.
Thinking that I was doing all three simultaneous, thinking more so that I'd go in the engineering and producing, but I didn't know in songwriting. And the first year's all theory,
Yeah.
like intro to physics and stuff, and like how to route things. And I'd never seen a patch bay before, so to me this was all like, I still had no frame of reference.
Right.
And then we had, a year into it, we had our first practice class over at Ocean Way. Well, it was still Ocean Way back then. This was before it split and became Ocean Way and Cello, and now, there's studio history here, and I think now it's is it East West? No, yeah, I can't
I
remember.
think
I
so.
think it's East
Yeah,
West now.
yeah.
And prior to that, it was United Western Recorders and stuff, where Gary Boatner came up, and
Good old Gary.
He used to assist for a friend of mine, Linny Spent,
Yeah.
who is actually the first woman to ever have a platinum record.
You know, you brought
As
up
an
Carrie
engineer.
Whites earlier. Who is more surfer like, Carrie or Gary? They're both really big surfer guys. Like, they both look
Yeah.
like they should live on a beach for the rest of their lives.
That's a tough.
That's a tough
I think
one.
they do.
They do, definitely.
They do.
Yeah.
Yeah. But,
Shout out to both of you. We love you guys.
Absolutely. So, we had our first practice class, and I touched a fader, went to La La Land, and it was like, oh, that's the thing that I need more of.
This is your instrument, the
Yeah.
extension of you.
And they were like, okay, tap, tap, tap. You need to
Yeah.
other people in
All right,
class.
yeah.
And I was like, okay. So, so then you're sending your resume around all the studios, looking for. You get in as a runner. That's
Mhm.
what you do at that point. You're not going. Nobody's going in as an engineer when they're that green.
Mm-hmm.
And back then, they did not hire women in the industry. That was the policy: do not hire women as engineers.
Yeah.
You're never going to get in the room. You were hired to work part-time at the front desk, answer phones, and entertain the client, but don't entertain the client. But you weren't getting in the room. And
Mhm.
it's so competitive in the studio world anyway. But
Yeah.
it's just like, so it was just like nobody was calling you because you're female, and there's that, stigma. And it's like there were only a handful of studio managers at the time who were female. I mean, literally it was like Candace Stewart, it was Siobhan O'Brien, Kit over at Energy, Rose at Record Plant, Jane Scobie at Royal Tone. I mean, there's like 5 women, and then everything else is male.
Yeah.
And the Village Recorders had hired some women in the 70s, Lanice being one of them. But otherwise, it was pretty much, nobody's even going to call you.
Yeah.
And I was kind of hitting a lot of just no responses, and bumped into one lady in one of my classes, and she says, call Bill Dooley, he hires women. So I did, and he did. And Bill is, he's dead now, but he was amazing. He was, he always. I'm so glad that he was my first employer, because they couldn't have asked for a better. Not only is he just amazing, an amazing set of years, and amazingly knowledgeable. I mean, he's the guy that when Tom Dowd retired, that they hired. I didn't know this one in the interview, and I told him I wanted to be the next Tom Dowd, and he hired me. I found out later. But Bill, came through the record plant and all that, and he's just, he was an amazing set of years.
Yeah.
Amazing set of years. Really kind, wonderful guy. Great knowledge base. And I walked in, and he said, yeah, I've hired women. I've had, women assistants before, and they're great. And I think that's great. And he's like, yeah, no, we need more of that. And he always treated me like an engineer. And at one point, we needed a studio manager, and he asked all the guys. And I found out after the fact, and we're sitting there, and I think we were aligning the tape machine or something like that. And, had this feeling inside, like, oh shit, I hope he doesn't want me to volunteer, because that's a lot of what you get.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to do that. So I just said, you didn't ask me. And he said, no, you're an engineer. And that was the entire conversation.
Boom.
And
drop the mic. We'll catch it. Don't let it hit the ground.
And I'm just
Don't
like, all right. And just to get that validation from the first person in such a sexist and misogynistic industry, was incredibly valuable to have from the get-go. Was to have that reinforcement from somebody who is so ensconced and so solid that he just always treated me like that. That it's like, no, Bill said I'm an engineer. Fuck you all. Oh, sorry, that's probably gonna get
no. Cheers to him. Cheers to him. Building confidence, and honestly, what it comes down to is, I don't care who you are, man or a woman. It comes down to the skill set. It's about what do you know, how you work with people. It's your professionalism. So get rid of everything else, and let's just do it the right way. It's 2019,
Absolutely.
for God's sakes.
And it was the most unique intro to studio life, because it's not like it's a studio that we were at was Brooklyn Recording. Out here, which had been the recording studio for Madonna's Maverick label.
Oh, fun.
And then, she moved the label over to Beverly Hills, and Freddie DeMann sold the building to Yoshiki, who's the mastermind drummer producer from the glam band X in Japan, not the X punk band, but the X band there. Okay, he can't open his door and get his newspaper in Japan. It's like he's Michael Jackson over there.
That's amazing.
So, your Japanese and Asian friends might know him. Your American white friends might not.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look him up. I apologize.
Yeah, no. So he had already bought One-on-One. It became One-on-One North, which was the old One-on-One where Metallica did all their stuff in the 80s in North Hollywood. And so he had that studio, and then he bought our studio. And for a year there, we were One-on-One North and South. And then later on, he brought his label Ecstasy in and renamed everything. But it was still Brooklyn, and that's what we know it as. But so I got there, and we have an E80 series console, and then 5 weeks later we got another one, and we were going to join the 2 consoles through the monitor section so you could mix from the sweet spot and rewire the whole room.
Whoa.
And we were doing it in-house. So the first 6 months of my employment at a studio,
repatching the whole room,
was, well, I wasn't doing the Elko pinning. Ronnie was doing
good.
that and stuff.
You're like,
a nightmare.
Thank God.
You get one pin wrong, it's like,
You still wake up, did I solder that right?
but I was the smallest, so I could crawl through the hole. So literally, like, there was one rack of outboard gear. It's like, no, that's mine.
You've got like the hand like come through, like, here's the cable.
I was in it, and they were passing the gear into me, and you got, that section full, that section, then you get this section full, and you got like, 4 rack space, and I'm like skinnying out on my back underneath.
That's so
it's like
funny.
they could have just like walled me in there.
Yeah,
like,
all right, hey, see you later,
What's the cask of Amontillado?
Yeah.
Where they
Yeah, totally. That's hilarious.
So yeah, and if you didn't understand signal flow, you did after you crawled through. You're
straight.
like, yeah, okay, so cable goes from there, and then so it was incredibly helpful. And then we started on session and stuff. So did that.
You went into the mixing board.
The bowels. So did all that, and then bounced around some other recording studios after that, and played some time at Track Record.
How long was your studio career?
I'd say that overall, between I'd say music, because
music, sure.
Just counting studio, I'd say about 5 years probably, because it was like They did an energy. No, so I wasn't in energy. I think there was like a weekend enterprise and then track record in Devonshire, which we were trying to get off the ground. And what I encountered there was a bit of poor studio managers,
Hmm.
and that'll sink a thing. And a lot of us do that. You end up at a studio that's not being run well. You're not getting sessions. Nobody's
Yeah.
getting sessions. It's kind of like the artist is like,
Management's a
why?
big thing. It's not just how to hit the buttons.
No,
It's how to
absolutely.
operate the
And
whole
then
machine.
you got people doing recreational activities, which always affects things, whatnot.
Yeah.
And so
That's kind of why I got out of it. Like I
there's
started that way, and I was like, I need to get out right
yeah,
away.
I think the last studio that I was at that was going on there, and just there were some other things, but whatever.
Yeah.
And then was trying the freelance bit, and
As a studio engineer.
yeah,
Still.
I mean,
Okay.
I engineered. I was in Delaney Bramlett's engineered his ranch. If you've ever heard of Delaney and Bonnie and Friends,
Yeah.
that's where Eric Clapton learned to sing.
Wow.
That's what Delaney is the one who taught him to sing, because he did, after I think Delaney and Bonnie was after he did, was it Cream? And then after that he came out and did that, and then after Delaney and Bonnie was Derek and the Dominoes, and then he started solo and started singing. But Delaney was to tell me, he's like, yeah, I taught Eric how to sing, because he was
Wow.
incredibly shy and had all that, and Delaney's like, no man, get out there.
Yeah,
And so,
exactly.
So, so engineered for Delaney Bramlett up at his ranch for a couple months, and then I got Delaney's Delaney. He has a reputation, we all know it. It hasn't changed if you start doing recreational stuff, and then some of the, it got to the point I was like, look, I'm either your engineer, I'm not, and a lot of the misogyny and sexism, where you'd be like, I'd be telling him the technical stuff and what's going on, and then he'd turn to the assistant who wasn't an engineer and ask him, and then kid's like, I don't know, she knows way more than I do. And then he'd call his buddy over at the studio, give him all the rundown, and 3 days later he'd come and tell me, he says it's a ghosting machine. I'm like, I told you that a week ago, dude.
Yeah,
It was
exactly.
just enough of that. And so it sort of reached a bit, and
Just an understanding it was time to move on.
it was time to move on.
Yep.
I was like,
And that's okay.
It's either I'm either your engineer or I'm not. So
Yeah.
if I'm not, then it's been lovely.
Yeah.
I'll see you another time, and if we are, then great, let's do
Yeah.
this, so and then I got into this. There was sort of a little bit of overlap here, because I was doing both at the same time, and then I was a restoration sound editor for about 3 years, I think, about 2000, 2001, 2003.
Awesome.
Working on the MGM catalog, the remastered re-releases. We did a lot of the PAL stuff, some of the NC, and I was working for Eric Dosh, who over at Sound Chamber Mastering, and Eric had come up through Warner Brothers and taught at USC, and he knew Bill because he used to be an SSL tech and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like, I went in for the interview, and he's like, what's your reference? I said, Bill Dooley. He says, you're hired. I was like, we're done. We're done.
Yes,
You're hired.
Life's getting easier, you know?
So it was great. I learned a lot from him. And the great thing is, like, coming from the music background, it's my first time working with picture.
Yeah.
And so I found the picture distracting. So I just stopped watching it and started cleaning up the sound, and I made it really clean. And I was working on something, it might have been a Pink Panther. So I was really focused on getting Mancini's score really, really clean. Coming from the
Yeah.
music background, I was like, no, this film to me is just Mancini. I could care less about the film part of it.
Yeah.
And so I started cleaning up the scene. It's a scene, I think, where he walks in the room and puts a glass down. So I clean it up. It sounds great. I play it for Eric. He's like, great. Now let's watch it with the picture. So we watch it with the picture, and when we finish, he's like, okay, put the footsteps back in.
Yeah.
Let's work with the picture from here on out. It's
Too
like,
funny.
Oh, I guess I need that for reference.
Oh my gosh, that's too funny. Gosh, well, you know what? God, we've totally skipped
No,
around, and
yeah.
I'm going back to here, but I need to ask you a question about
Yeah.
this, because doing restorative sound for older pictures, that's something that I didn't even think about that.
Oh yeah, well we did Fortune Cookie with Jack Lemmon, and Jack was dead, and we were missing dialogue. So what do you do when your actor's dead, and even if he was alive, he couldn't match his voice from like 40 years ago.
You put some marbles in your mouth
No.
or some cotton and you
You got-
talk, or what do you do?
You got two options, because a lot of times the actor who delivered the performance can't recreate their performance, because
Yeah.
just your voice changes as you age.
Of course.
It's a
Yeah,
given.
the timbre changes. Yep,
the voice, all that
exactly.
sort of stuff. And so you really have two options. You either hire a mimic, or you go through the film looking for all the sounds to piece it together.
Oh, wow.
guess which one we did?
Yeah. They're
It
like,
took,
well, you're good enough. You can handle this, right?
I did not do the piecing together. I think Dave did that, but it took him 3 days for
Wow.
one line.
For one
One
line.
line, 2 lines, yeah. To
Crazy.
go through, because you had to not just find the sounds, but find the sounds at the right inflection to deliver the performance, and then make it not noticeable.
Unreal.
So it's a kind of magic
Yeah.
that we do behind the scenes
Yeah.
that nobody has a clue
Yeah.
unless they were there.
And now they have those programs that are coming out. I don't know if you've even seen them yet. Adobe has a program where if you have a script, they have a 20-minute script that you have to read to the program to like basically ingest all of your dialogue into
And
it.
keep in mind, by the way,
Yeah.
the early 2000s, we were doing this on Sonic Solutions because Pro Tools was still buggy. It wasn't.
Oh
it
yeah,
wasn't standard yet.
exactly.
So Sonic Solution, it's which was an amazing. Like Sonic was like a scalpel, and
Yeah.
Pro Tools was more like a mallet.
Yeah,
back
exactly.
then. And then Sonic developed a plugin because Pro Tools. But anyway, but yeah, we did that. So I was doing that, and then 9/11 happened. And that kind of shut us down because 9/11 happened, and then the studios got really kind of paranoid about. They were always paranoid about theft and black market stuff and whatnot.
Yeah.
But 9/11, they went from like, we're going to send you 3 to 5 films a month in 3 to 5 languages each, to here's one film in one language and nothing for 3 months.
Yeah.
And so 2000.
Yeah, everybody closed up around those times.
2003. It was interesting because in music in end of 98 or beginning of 99, that's when A&M closed. I think it was 98. They hung the black flag. It was just up the street, and everybody was out of business.
Wow.
And so you were starting to see studios close starting in the late 90s when the Studio in a Box sort of came out. And then flash forward to 9/11, and a lot of places went out of business then too. And we tried to limp along for as long as we did, but literally 2003. Most of the staff was taking other work, and we were collecting unemployment while being employed. And props to Eric Dosh and the guys at the studio there, because they they did their best to keep us on payroll for as long as they could, and keep, even to the extent of not taking any pay themselves, so that we could be paid and have health insurance and stuff. So
those are good
employers.
people.
They're good people, and Eric's always been an amazing guy.
Yeah. That's respect right there.
And it was to the point that literally. I went out on tour while being employed there.
Yeah.
So this was my buddy Louis McKay, who was a live sound front of house TM, FOH and TM front of house and tour manager for those that don't do live.
Thank you.
For Al Green, and he'd been with Al for 7 years. And so when they'd come to LA, and we met at NAMM at the Groove Tubes booth years ago.
Cool.
And R.I.P. to Aspen Pittman, who recently died, who was Groove Tubes. But so we met at the Groove Tubes booth, and then whenever they were in LA on the West Coast, I'd go join them. So I'd go, Al's got a show at the Greek. Okay, we'll go, and I'll be at the board with Louis. Sometimes taking half the board, sometimes just hanging out, and then we'd go to I'd join him, go to Vegas. So I'd hit the LA and Vegas and whatnot and do that. So that year, Louis wanted to bring me on tour for the whole thing, but it was not paid. I was like, well, I can't come out on a full tour for no money because I do have to pay rent.
Yeah,
like,
I gotta eat.
I can't not have any. Well, no, they'll feed you on tour, but I was like,
that's true. But
even,
you got to eat after the tour.
But even if my apartment, I was like, and it was a fantastic offer, and I wish that I'd had like a trust fund or something so I could have taken it. But it's the reality of life. And granted, I was living in a little studio apartment that was like $750 a month, utilities included and stuff. But it was like I was making like probably $1,500 a month, so it's like half of it went to my place and the other half went to health insurance.
Yeah.
And I didn't eat.
Yeah, exactly.
Just in gas in the car. That was
Doctor's like, you should eat more. Thanks, Doc. I'll work on that.
I was trying to lose weight, So I couldn't do that, but I was able to join the West Coast leg. So that started here in LA in the Greek, and then we went to the Paris and Vegas, and then we shot up the coast. And I can't tell you because it's a tour, so I have no idea what towns I was in. It was a different venue each night. And
what's that like, by the way? Like always being in a new venue every single night, loading in, loading out, because you're doing everything, I'm assuming.
Well, no, you got roadies.
Okay, you do have roadies that are helping you.
Yeah, I'm not unloading the gear.
Okay, good.
I'm engineering. So,
okay, good.
So we would land at the location, and then we're checking out, making sure everything's there. And we weren't traveling with our own backline on this, which makes it a lot more difficult. So, by the way, I would say that in the grand scheme of like who's got the hardest job in sound, it goes to production sound. And after that, it goes to live sound when you're touring without your carrying your backline, because you come into wherever it is you're playing that night, and you have to use the house gear, and you have no idea what that is, no idea who's maintained it, if it's ever been maintained, what your power's like, if it's
Yeah.
sufficient for what your band is playing.
You're
I mean,
blind.
you're just like, holy shit. And then you walk in, and like if you walk into the Paris in Vegas, which you think, oh, that's a nice room. Well, that room was acoustically designed for PowerPoint presentation, and we've got Al Green. so,
Yeah, it's
so
not the same.
so we landed there, and and I'm at the board front of house, and Lewis is walking the room, and we're trying to tune to get the sound, and there's like no way. There's
Yeah.
just no way. You're like it's you got whatever frequency hitting here and hitting there, and you can't tune the room,
Right.
and you're just like, there's no way. We're like, the only thing we can do is make it sound good at front of house, and then of course after the show everybody comes up and tells you can't mix, and you're sounding like, you know what?
Yeah, you're like, thanks for the memo. I'll work on it. I'll try harder next time.
Thank you so much. Next time, don't buy the cheap seats under the bass trap.
No kidding. Jesus.
But yeah, so that was really.
It's a cold world, isn't it?
So we did that, and the tour ended at Monterey Jazz Fest, which was sold out, and Al was headlining, and we're doing sound check, and Lewis just says, "You're doing monitors tonight." So I was like, okay, trial by fire, throw you in, and of course it went fine.
Yeah.
But that's how you do it. You're just like, okay, you're going to do this tonight, and you're either going to do it or you're going to learn something.
Yeah,
you're going to learn
exactly.
something either way. You might
For
learn
sure.
that you can do it,
Yeah.
which is what I learned.
You might learn you can't.
You might learn you can't. And then the question is like, okay, what could we do differently? And what did we learn from this? And all right, let's go back and let's work on this, and let's, get you up to speed.
For
And
sure.
the reason for this was Lewis's plan was to pitch to Al bringing me on as the monitor engineer and train me for a year. And then he was planning to leave because it had been 7 years and pass the tour off to me. So we got back from tour, and I went back to Sound Chamber, and we all got laid off. And I was waiting for the call to move to Memphis.
Yeah.
And the call came that Al had just decided 7 years was time for him to change everything in his organization.
Wow.
So I wasn't moving to Memphis, and that was when I was like, all right, well, I'll try production sound. Because I could have gone back into post studio,
Right.
but I'd been on graveyard shift for a couple of years, and I missed people. So I was like, I missed the camaraderie of being on the road with the rest of the band and the tour, and I missed being in the studio with the band and all that. And so I was like, well, let's try production sound, see how that goes. And if it doesn't, I'll go back to college and, I don't know, be an accountant. I'm not going to be an accountant, but whatever. I'd find something else to do. And that was 2003, and it's I'm still here, so I guess it's working out.
Amazing.
Yeah.
You know what? I want to segue for 1 second and talk to everyone, since we were just talking about your live experiences. I want to let everyone know that we have a new seminar coming up at Video Mantis, which is called Audio for VR. It's going to be hosted by Ben Adams, and it's going to be this month, September 21st and 22nd. It's going to be in Pasadena. You can find the information on our website. Just go to videomantis.com. It's right on the front homepage banner. You can take a look and register for that event. It is a paid event, but it's a 2-day workshop. You're going to learn everything that you need to know in order to be Ben, the guy that literally just went to France to do Billie Eilish's virtual reality sound for her concert.
Oh,
and I
cool.
think he's on a plane coming back. So we're going to get him on a Mantis discussion to talk about this soon as well. But he's going to be hosting this whole event, sharing his knowledge. And he's even excited because he's got his mentors of virtual reality sound that he's geeking out about. I thought he was like the #1 guy, and he's telling me there's people above him.
Yeah,
so
no, we all
I'm
have
really
mentors.
excited.
We all have mentors.
We all do. So we got all those people. We would love to see you guys. Please take a look at that event and help support Ben. That's what Video Mantis is about. Getting the mentors that really know and love these special niches of sound and helping to spread the proper education. This type of education you're not going to get in universities. It doesn't exist. This is right at the fine line of just coming out technology, and these are the guys that are literally doing it day in and day out. So if you want to learn from the masters, you're going to want to look at the Audio for Virtual Reality Sound workshop with Ben Adams' mentor that's going to be happening this month, literally in a couple weeks, September 21st and 22nd. Take a look at our website for more information. But continuing on, forget about live for a minute. Now we got to get into what we're literally doing, because from 2003 until now, you're clearly, it's been a minute. And one of the things that I want to talk to you mostly is that a lot of people say, like you even said, production sound is the hardest. It is definitely one of the most, finicky is probably not the right word, but temperamental and precise sound jobs that are out there. You have to be really good in order to do production sound. And you, with all of your knowledge of studio work and live work, then having to step down to be a utility. What was that like for you? Because
it was very hard.
yeah, and there's another thing. Without bashing anybody in our industry, there's one thing that I can say is that a lot of production sound mixers, yes, they know how to use their equipment, they know how to use their cart, but when we even look at mixers, I would say maybe about 80% of them don't use a mixer to its full potential. They don't necessarily use EQs. They may not use the routing capabilities that are inside of it because we don't necessarily need to. We need to know how to record very good, clean tracks that complement what is happening on the creative side of things. How does all this make you feel? What can you say about all this?
It was interesting because coming from studio and even live, where you had to, and at the time I could do this, less so now maybe, but and then of course technology's changed completely.
Of course,
back then
yeah,
we
it
were
changed
still,
the whole industry.
now it's all digital. Back
Yep.
then it was still, there were still analog consoles on tour and stuff. Now I think it's all like Digico and stuff. But so if
Yeah.
you don't know the board, I mean, you can learn the board. That's fine,
Yep.
and learn the routing. But if you don't know it, it's much harder to walk in.
Exactly. If you don't know the theory.
Well, yeah, and it's not just theory, but just like routing and presets and recall and all,
Oh yeah, don't go in blind with a digital board.
Dante.
Jesus.
I mean, you and I remember seeing that early on. So I but coming studio and live, especially if you were trying to engineer around town, you had to be able to walk into a studio with whatever board and be proficient. That was, which at the time it was like Neve and SSL and Trident and all that. So it was. I mean, there's others, and Digico came in or whatever, but that was part of it. That's how it made you valid. I mean, yes, the assistant comes with the room, and they'll be able to help you with like, what are the particulars about the room? What's patch bay routing? What channels don't work? What's our workaround for that? Like
Yeah.
if you work in a room that's always working, like say Capitol or something, you walk into that room, or you would back then, you see paper clips everywhere on the board, and you're like, okay, so I want to do this, how do I do that? And the assistant is the one who knows the workaround, because the room's
Yeah.
never down.
Exactly.
So the room's never down, we can't
they don't have time
do
to fix
maintenance.
it.
Right, exactly. And so, whereas other studios would, the maintenance happens like at night in between, you can't, depending what it is, in between sessions, but you need like some time off to really go through everything and you take it apart and whatnot. So there's always the workarounds that go with that. But coming from that, and then in restoration, since we were working in the world of Sonic Solutions, and Linksys was what our digital patch bay was, so I was familiar with that already. And when I came into production sound, it was interesting because the Yamaha was relatively new board to production sound at the time. Maybe
The O&V, right?
yeah,
that's,
the
that's
O&V.
what you're talking about.
That was new to production world. And I remember going to seminar about it and sitting down. There were a bunch of other guys in there, and they had no idea who I was, of course, because I was new to them, and they all knew each other because they're all
in it,
and they know whatever. And they're sitting down, and the tech is giving us the walkthrough for the Yamaha, and I think they were all working on Coopers.
Yeah.
So that just completely different capabilities in the board.
Exactly.
And things that the Cooper just like
Yeah,
didn't
they are
have.
just
It's
totally
completely
different beasts.
Internal routing and
Yeah.
patching, things that would never even exist on a Cooper board and never got used. And
Yeah.
so I walk in and I'm like, oh, okay, so it's like Linksys, and I immediately start asking all these questions on routing, and they're all like,
Exactly. Yeah. The slow head turn. Huh? Who are you?
well, and Jeff Wexler was there, and he'll tell you, he came up to me after the class, and he was like, I want to talk to you.
Because he's like, everything here scared me, and it didn't you.
He didn't.
I'm
He's like,
teasing.
he's
I'm
like,
teasing.
and then they're like looking, and then Don came out and they're like looking me up. He's like, holy shit, you were. It was all indie stuff at the time, but it
Yeah.
was just like, just doing my thing. Anyway, that's how we met. And
Was that the Philip Palmer O&V thing? If I remember right, maybe not. Maybe not.
Phil got an
He did
O&V
one
later, and
later.
he did his group later, which is, I don't even know if anybody's on it anymore, but this was done at what's the name of that sound place over on it's in Hollywood. I think it's Seaward or something. But they basically rent a lot of gear to live sound and touring. So they had the boards and they had the space enough to bring in, like, I think there were maybe 10 of us or something.
Oh,
It was a
awesome.
small
Okay.
group.
Yeah.
And it was just like an intro to the O1V.
Yeah.
I don't think Phil was running that at the time.
Yeah,
but
it might
I
not have
don't
been. I think
know.
you're right. I think you're right. He might have been a little bit
might
later.
have been a little later because he was
Yeah.
one of the early adopters on the board as
Right.
well. I mean, they were just,
Yeah, he took it by storm.
Yeah, but then, he understood the routing, and he was also utilizing a lot of that because later on he was doing Glee, and you needed that routing for that
Yeah,
stuff.
exactly.
So there are certainly people who understood and appreciated it, and as they say, glommed to it straight out of the bat. It's like, oh, I know how this works. And then there are
Hollywood
guys who are
Sound
just,
Services. Thank you,
Thank
Jeff.
you, Jeff.
Hi, Jeff. How are you? Good to have you on board.
So yes, that is exactly the place. So yeah,
Excellent.
that was
Excellent.
I think that was the start of technology changing in our in production sound industry, was that board kind of entering in and people going, oh, this is different.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Well, I mean
that combined with hard
that
disk
would be
recording
like
and multi-track.
what year was that roughly around? You said like 2007ish.
Oh no, it was earlier.
Earlier. It's like 03, 04, probably 04.
Probably 04.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be like equating like a Tesla to like
'Cause I
a
think I
Rolls
bought it
Royce
in
of a
04.
Cooper being a Rolls Royce and an ONV being a Tesla with all
Yeah.
the features it has. You know, doors coming up on its own. You know, cop avoidance mode. Do you know that they do that, by the way? Not sound related, but whatever.
That's good to know.
Yeah, like they literally have. This isn't sound, but Teslas. If a police officer is going to like write a ticket because your car's parked illegally, it will evade and just start driving around the block until the cop leaves, and then it'll repark itself.
You know,
Genius.
That's a good kid.
Genius. we need features like help. The AD's coming behind me. Light up.
Like I think the
son of
Tesla
a-
just got a bump in its allowance.
Exactly.
I'm like, okay, you didn't do the dishes, but you saved me a parking ticket. We're good.
Exactly. So getting back into it, what can you tell me are the biggest differences between live sound and production sound, since you've done both for so long?
Well, I mean, I didn't do live sound for very long. It was truly just that.
But you did do it concentrated. Like you've done more than most.
That's
So
than most in our industry. I think probably that's true because it's a different world. But you know, one of the other things is that I think one of the main things is that makes production sound more challenging is the camera, like the fact that it's even there. Okay.
Can we just get rid of that? Can we go back to
straight up,
talkies?
the fact that we have a camera that dictates where we can put a microphone makes production sound the hardest thing. The fact that they're like, no, the cameras go here. It's a wide shot. You know, you're booming. The boom's got to be up in the tree there. And by the way, we've got some fog machines. They're right there, and there's a red. You're like, you know what? I don't have a camera in live sound. You try.
Yeah.
We would have studio where they come into the studio, take us shots or behind the scenes of the band, and like, oh, you know that mic's in my shop. No, don't you dare touch a single microphone. That's right there, and that's the snare sound. You don't.
Yeah, exactly.
You can shoot around everything, but you don't get to touch or move any microphone because it's all about the sound in the studio, in live. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Try telling Ariana Grande's camp, you know, we got to move that microphone.
I want to
She's
see
like,
the
no.
drummer better.
Yeah.
Can you move this off of the timpani?
Yeah. Well, and you know, it's like, I mean, you know, there's like, and then the live things like Postmodern Jukebox and stuff. It's like, well, okay, you've got a camera thing, but at the end of the day, we're giving a performance.
Yeah.
And the performance is the sound.
Yeah.
And the band wants their fans to experience that and have the best sound. They want to be represented. They're like,
Yes.
we don't want to sound like shit.
Yeah.
So really, in all of those other areas, sound is king. So the hardest
Absolutely.
part was coming to production sound. We were like,
Nobody
you can't
cares
do that.
about me anymore.
And you're like, I'm like, no, you can't do that. And DP's like, who are you?
Too funny.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, that was an interesting, you know, little rude awakening.
Yeah, you know what? You brought up a really good point because, like, it definitely comes down to capturing the performance. And I think that there is something that happens with some people, with respect, where the engineering side of thing takes over and becomes more of an importance factor in the conscious of their mind than the actual what's in front, the performance, the capturing of the
And you can't have
of
that
the scene.
because, you know, at the end of the
Yeah.
day, and this is something that shares with music, is that at the end of the day, you know, our job in my world, the way I look at it, my theory, my philosophy, my job is to capture, protect, and preserve the performance. It doesn't matter if that's live band on a stage, doesn't matter if it's a band in a studio, doesn't matter if we're doing, you know, a film shoot, theater, episodic, whatever. You're there for the performance.
Yeah.
And you have to capture that as truly as you can without inhibiting it. And so at the end of the day, vibe is huge, man.
Yeah.
If you are harshing on anybody's vibe, that affects the
Ooh,
performance.
it just
It
brings the energy
you
of a
just,
set down.
You can't.
Yep.
And, you know, on set, actors have so much going on. You know, the director has so much, everybody's got so much going on and you're not part of it. You've got so much going on.
Yeah.
But your stuff that's going on is not their stuff that's going on.
Exactly.
And they are barely handling their stuff. So the last thing they want is your stuff on top of their stuff. So, you know, it's like, all right, well, how can we make this work to get the performance? And then it depends on who are you working with.
Right.
You know, and what can they what can they do? And I will say that I think that it's fantastic when you have theater actors, because they, to my
Oh,
mind, they're capable of
yes.
so much more than, say, just screen actors.
Just because you can cut and go again doesn't mean that you should not work on your trade, know your
Right.
lines, and be able to work with your
And
actors.
this is where I think it gets down to understanding of the craft, whichever
Yeah.
craft is yours, and whatever that is. And it's like, okay, if I need to be able to give you a note, or the director needs to be able to give you a note. Whoever's giving the notes needs to be able to give you a note. And sometimes that note is, can you work on your diction? Can you enunciate? You're mumbling.
Yes. Yes.
Can you just be a little hitting my mic? Can you be?
Can you not hit your
Can you
mic? No, just
project?
kidding.
Yeah. Can you not hit your mic? I was like, I know you want to pound your chest, but we have a mic there, and it's a wide shot.
Right,
Like, DP won't let
exactly.
us get it. Can you? And maybe
Anytime you tell an actress not or an actor not to touch their mic, they're going to touch it. Have you noticed
the
that?
beauty of production sound is that most likely you're going to cover this.
Yeah.
So if you don't get it in one, hopefully there's another shot that's tighter. You got to boom up there. Don't worry about the master man. Master never plays for like it's entrances, exits, and
Yeah.
you cut
There might
whatever.
be 2 or 3 directors where you got to get it. Like a Quentin
Yeah.
Tarantino movie or Inception, Christopher Nolan.
Chris Nolan.
You got to be getting all those shots, including the wides.
But the difference being, I haven't worked with Chris, but I worked with Jonah Nolan.
Okay.
Because he was a Western. But the difference being is that there is an understanding of camera. I mean, Westworld, that's still film.
Yeah.
So, we make sure it's right. Most of the time we've got the time to do it. And then if we start rolling and something's not working, we cut and we go again. And we're not only cutting from, we get film jams, especially if you're shooting a Western.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the other thing is like you get in the conversation with the camera department at lunch about the lore being lost. And I know all the old timers are going to love this because you're sitting there like, we're working with film, but nobody knows how to prep the camera or clean it.
Isn't
or you
that
go and
funny?
you're like,
Yeah.
Can you
Is it a lost art? Or are we losing that technique? Because
Well,
that's one thing that Video Mantis is trying to do is to not have these techniques be lost.
Well, yeah, that film one has to, as well as the two. And in fact, this is also a conversation. I've mentioned Lanice already, but Lanice Ben is working with Sound Girls, and she just did a class teaching how to align a 2-inch tape machine.
Yeah.
Which nobody has kids don't know how to
What's
do
a
anymore.
2-inch tape machine?
Exactly. And so, all these amazing machines, and I mean, a Studer 800 Mark III or, whatever, it's just 827, they're beautiful machines.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys can talk about your Nagras and your Coopers. To me, it's like,
Yeah.
an
When you
an
see a
Eve 80 series.
$500,000 2-track machine, it's
like,
beautiful.
Fairchild, the
Yeah.
upward gear. It's like, oh man. I mean, they're finicky,
Yeah.
and they need to be massaged right.
Yeah.
But oh my God, they sound
Gotta
amazing.
give them some love.
And so, Lanice's theories, you got all these machines just sitting around town. She's like, you think people would use them if they knew how to use them, maybe.
Right.
But and then there's interesting part because my partner's a music producer and engineer, and jumping into other studios and talking with other studio managers, and they were at the Lair recently.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Larry at the Lair, and they come in and they bring their laptop with Pro Tools and they set it down on the Neve console and they never even go through the board. They're like, they don't even know. And they'll
Get this off of that board.
break knobs and stuff. And you're
Blasphemy.
like, and you're like, you got this studio full of all this amazing, analog gear that sounds so good, and you come with a laptop with Pro Tools.
But I got a plug-in in here. Check it out what I can do.
And
You
you're
know?
like,
It's
yeah,
like, come on
man.
now.
No, and so, yeah, I think there's got to be something. I mean, technology changes, and we've got new ways of doing things and stuff. But there are sounds that happen when tubes contract and expand
Yeah.
and heat up, and you can fry an egg on them. That a plug-in may not have that variable.
And you said something to me on the phone last night. I was so happy that we kind of had a pre-meeting. I got to start doing that more. One of the things that you brought up that was just so fascinating, it was a different perspective for me, was I'm intimidated by the fact that technology is getting so good and so cheap that everyone else is coming up. So, it's like every other day there's like 500 new sound mixers that buy a kit, and you're just like, hey, you know what? When you see all this happening online, the fear raises in anyone. So it takes a while to control that type of feeling. But what you told me on the phone was it doesn't matter about the technology. It matters
Yeah.
about just being the professional that you are, and harnessing your trade and learning more and becoming the professional that,
Yeah.
quite frankly, is better than the rest.
There's a saying we all have is like it's never the tool, it's always the fool. So you're like
Ooh, I like that.
you can go out, doesn't matter, you can walk into uh, whatever the situation is, whether how that situation is resolved is entirely going to be dependent on who's the engineer, what their skill set is, and what they're capable of doing, and how they roll with punches and adapt to the situations at hand. Um, so again, it comes down to knowledge and flow and thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
You know, the thing that I mentioned last night, because they weren't part of our conversation last night, so we'll
I
share
was
with
secretly
you.
taping it. No, I'm kidding.
it'll be
Yeah.
it'll be the Mantis Underground.
Yeah, right. Yeah, can I keep that? That's
Yeah,
great.
sure, man.
I
Take
like
it.
that.
Mantis Underground.
Shoot.
The prep days.
Love it.
Is that, you know, I'd seen some of this happening in music, and coming from music, I'd seen it happening prior, so I wasn't surprised when it started happening in film, because I'd seen similar. And that was when, you know, Pro Tools started getting less bugging coming out, and people started getting studios and boxes and trying to make albums at home. And studios in the old model were closing, less money was being put into it. The labels were like, oh, we can save money by not developing an artist. We'll just buy the album that you made in your bedroom,
Yeah.
put it out there. You've probably been working on it for 20 years, so it's probably the best thing you'll ever do. And we'll put it out. We'll make some money off of that. And
Yeah.
then, you know, you might get a second album, might not, but you got a lot of one-hit wonders at that point. And then, and the development of the artist, and the development of the music, and producing, and the grooming, and all that kind of went out the wayside.
The grooming, even that.
The grooming is huge.
Yeah.
Huge. And then, so you see a lot of meh music come out, and the bar drops, consumers buy it anyway, so the label's like, oh, they don't care, so we'll just keep putting that out there.
Right.
So what you got was a lot of people who suddenly had access that wouldn't have access before, and that's not a bad thing.
No.
The part that's challenging is that it's just more people who are learning, having access, and so you get a lot more stuff you have to go through to find the cream of the crop, so as they say. So, you know, used to be the cream will always rise.
Yeah.
So this is accessibility, and it might get, you know, the accessibility might get into the hands of somebody who might not otherwise have it, who is one of those geniuses, who is the next, you know, Quincy Jones or whomever. But you're going to have to wade through everybody who's not first, and there's going to be so much more of them. And so I think when I saw that happening as film, you know, started cycling out, and as, you know, the digital cameras started coming in, is the same thing. Digital cameras were much cheaper, they were more accessible to everybody, they were their own set of challenges that we need to work with. But all of a sudden, a camera's in everybody's hands, and then sound equipment followed. And so everybody can make a film now. Now, whether it's good, whether they're learning all the lessons on set that they might have, you know, learned had they been, you know, they're still learning them, hopefully.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. You get a lot more content of all different quality levels, and you still have to wade through it to find the gems. But what's going to save us at the end of the day are our unions, because at the end of the day, your A-list producers and directors, they've learned their craft. They've come up, and they want to only work with the people who have mastered their craft, or who have the same value of craft that they do.
Same vision and value.
Value and respect, and be like, okay, how are we going to do this? They don't, they've already learned how to make a film in school, where they had to cut corners because of budget and because something didn't work. And they're like, well, we know how to do that. We don't want to do that. We want to do this. And that's where the unions are going to protect us, because all those filmmakers only want to do union films for the same reasons that we all do, because the pay is better, because we get benefits, because you get a certain level of quality crew.
I don't want to say that it forces the production to take care of you, but it helps to make sure that they're taking care of you, and make sure that the whole family is just looking out for each other, which is what it should be.
And you've got, you know, you've got all different types of union contracts. You'll find, you know, you'll end up where you end up, and you'll work to whatever level you end up working at, and that's the same kind of thing. And budgets dictate that too. But I mean, for years I had a filmmaker friend who we would get into heated discussions, usually after a couple of beers, because I was very pro-union, and he was not. Because as the filmmaker side, he wanted to just raise whatever money he needed for his film and pay his crew whatever he could pay them, and this should be okay. And I was coming from the union world. I'm like, no, man, because I want my health insurance. I've got to want to pay my bills. I want to be able to put my, you know, have kids, put them through all the things.
When they're cutting our line on our services and our rates all the time, like, you know what, that wireless system, can't you just throw that in for free?
No, you can't.
Now you want us to pay for our health care too?
Right, and so
that
all of that bit, we would get into heated discussions about that, and then he worked for long enough. He eventually had to join the TGA and the PGA and start doing union film, and now all he wants to do, he wants all his films union because now he's getting the benefits.
Yeah, exactly.
Now he's understanding. But he didn't understand them because he hadn't had them. And so we have this it's almost like a cloak between the union and non-union world where there's a less understanding. And I always tell people, I remember when I got in, the first thing I did coming from music where there were no unions, like the first thing I did is like get me into the union as soon as possible.
Right.
How many days do I need? What do I need?
Yeah, I want that protection. I want my family.
I think Sheraton Toyota does a seminar on it now, but back
he does.
then,
I've been talking to him to try to get it under Video Mantis. We're working on it.
Back then, I did all the research, called contract services. I had a whole form letter with all the things and got that through and everything.
It's not easy to do. It's a very confusing process.
Well, in contract services, they yanked me around for 6 months. I had to think how to say that you wouldn't bleep it out.
Yeah, well, no, it's okay. I mean,
but literally, like I had all my days, way more than I needed, and then they wanted the canceled checks from the bank. So I had to go get all the canceled checks from the bank to show that they'd really, you know, and get them that for like 6 months. And then I just kept sending more and more in, and I think after 6 months they were just like, okay, fine, whatever, just let her in. Yeah. And then you go down and write a check to the union. But it's like, get in as soon as you can. Because one, any days you work automatically go to your retirement health care and everything like that, which a lot of people don't realize. That starts from day one, whether you're working, you never lose those.
Exactly.
So just start soon, even if you're not getting a lot of union work at first, which a lot of us didn't.
Yeah, in fact, but Sarah, it's expensive.
It is.
So what do you say to the people that are just starting, that are like,
well,
yeah, but you're I mean, how am I going to eat? You know, what do you say to that?
I'm not saying stop with your, whatever you've been
please
working
eat.
on. Yeah, please
eat.
Like if you've got a steady career in the non-union, keep taking your work.
Yeah.
Because working hones your skills.
In fact, the unions don't care if you work non-union. That's one thing that I think a lot of people don't understand. They think, oh my God, if I work non-union, I better be quiet. It better be Video Mantis Underground.
No.
Because if not, I'm going to get in trouble.
There are plenty of non-union shoots that are never going to be union.
Uh-oh.
You don't have a signal?
Don't have a signal. Everyone, if you could just let us know if we're okay. I think we're still live here. I'm going to keep talking for a second. I'm just going to go behind the computer. We're doing a live session today, everyone. And obviously the computer's working hard for us.
It just went back to green, but it did do
yeah, we're good. Yeah, you know what? I think it was just a buffer
technical
underrun
difficulties.
right over here. Basically, if the kilobits goes like up above 5, but
of
watch
the,
that.
Seminar?
If it starts blinking red with an X, that's really bad. We're not at the blinky red X yet.
Good.
We're just at the sometimes red X.
This is
whatever.
This is a bit where it's a little trivia story. There's an instrument years ago called the mellotron, which is early sampler. It's basically long loops of tape, 2-inch tape with what we would call sound effects, but what you would call sampled instruments at the time. Yeah. And Beatles used it on Sgt. Pepper's, but it's a temperamental machine. It always tangled and stuff, so nobody could tour with it except for the Moody Blues. And that was because one of the members had actually worked at the mellotron factory filming this. So there's a funny story where it probably wasn't funny at the time. It's funny now, all these years later. But the Moody Blues were playing in Fillmore West for Bill Graham, who was Bill Graham. If you don't know what he's like, you can easily Google it. and the mellotron broke down. And so the story is that Bill was playing Bugs Bunny cartoons on the projection screen behind him to everybody was probably on acid, Bugs Bunny cartoons while they were like how to fix a mellotron with a coat hanger and a flashlight and a screwdriver in 20 minutes.
Sounds like a YouTube video.
Next time we have technical difficulties, we'll have Bugs Bunny up here.
Yeah, we'll do a vault talk with that. That's crazy.
But the thing is also like when we got in the union, you and I, there were not all these contracts that extended down to the lower, all these. I know that
to the digital media, the new media contracts.
I know we call them the tier 1 and the tier 0. Those contracts didn't exist when we got in. So it was literally either you were high level union or you're not union. Yeah. So it was like
you're in the club or you're not.
If you're below the budget, you're not. But you still had to have the card because somebody sometime might call you and say like, hey, can you come in for a day? And actually Jeff Wexler was the first one to call me in, and that was back, I think, on Mama's Boy. I came in for playback on them. And then, Robert Maxfield's mom was ill, and I came in and covered for the last, I think it was week and a half of the shoot as the utility because he had to fly back east. So that was my first time working with Jeff and Dawn. And interestingly enough, that was the shoot where they were demoing the cement.
Oh, wow.
That was how far back. That was when
The
they
good
were
old
the first
5U.
ones to have it.
God, do you remember when that came out? There's a
First
blue
time I
mic,
heard it,
everybody.
we were doing, it was the playback day that we'd done at that club. Jeff, you're still listening, you'll probably remember the name of it. And then we went to that little park, and our cast, Jeff and Diane, I think we did the bit, they were on the horses and riding the horses through the park wherever we were. Just remember that bit. And that's when they pulled out the cement, and I got to listen to it for this time. And then we're spraying it, and I could hear the roll off and the difference. And prior to that, it was like, the old school mics.
416s,
yeah.
416s and
416s and,
MKHs and Neumanns.
And the CMC5, which is
Yep.
what they were using with 41 on it, or 6.
Oh yeah, he was a
depending.
big Sheps man.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jeff.
So,
We're talking about Jeff Wexler.
So that was the first time I heard that. But the difference being is that later on we got these contracts that extended down into lower budgets and made those made those shoots union. And the benefit of those, I know there are a lot of us that don't like working on them. I'm not going to say that I do, because I think, but what they gave us is they got a lot of people who were getting caught in that in between, and they gave them the opportunity to make health hours.
Nice.
And you could, the rates were low.
That's
the
what it
rates were
was.
low,
You're right.
And I think the tier 0 is what minimum wage. You negotiate what you can get. I don't even know, but you are getting health care, and that was a stopgap that a lot of us needed. And so I don't think that's where. The purpose of those contracts wasn't to create a new realm of film, which is ultimately what happened. That low budget realm, but that low budget realm always existed. It was Corman, it was Asylum back in the day.
Right.
And they were just exploitive filmmakers who would just not pay you. So this, at least, the union can fight for your pay, and you can get health care, and you're getting a wage. It may not be what you want, but it fills in the gaps, or it's that place where you can learn, but now you're learning on a union set rather than in the non-union world. And then eventually, the point is,
which is a better place to learn, because everybody's kind of a little bit more on top of their stuff.
Not only that, I mean, even when it's like their first union film and they're not, but there are still guidelines that they have to follow for IATSE and for DGA and for PGA, and there's things that you can do to protect yourself if you're getting harassed, or if you're not getting paid, if they start to explode, you have recourse. You don't have that in the non-union
Exactly.
world. So
you just kind of get thrown into the crosshairs or
so
thrown under the bus.
Okay, so I'm a big proponent, because the union, we're strength in numbers, and it's whatever you put into it. I also run my HOA, and it's like, one of the biggest things on an HOA, it's commitment to the union, is apathy of the members. And so the more involved you get, and the more you go in, you're like, this is what we need, and then you get that going, then it's a better representation of you. But it's really, you have to be involved, or you have to communicate that. Go to the meetings, and then meet people and stuff. And the sooner you get in the union, the sooner you start going to meetings, the sooner you meet
Ask
people. The
not
sooner
what
you
your union can do for you. Ask what you can do for your union.
Well, and also the thing is, if you're staying in the non-union world, nobody in the union world knows you.
Yeah.
And so we don't know, if we don't know you, we can't be like, oh, you're really cool, and I like you, and you've got school, so okay, hey, I've got a day where I need an additional, let's get you,
Yeah, let's see how you work out.
Come
let's
on
throw
down
you
and
into the
shadow
fire.
us. Come visit us on set. We can't get you on paper, whatever. And you kind of have to stalk the people you want to mentor you.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
I know that sounds,
you always have to reach out. You know what?
And
maybe somebody's going to say no, but somebody's going to say yes. You know what?
Right.
Sound mixers are not. Some of them are assholes.
Yeah.
Not all of them are assholes. Actually, a
there's-
lot of them aren't assholes, to
Right.
be honest. And I can't tell you, I mean, God, I could probably name off 10 or 20. I'm not going to right now, but that would be like, heck yeah, come on by and let's talk. Some mixers love to talk.
So, because nobody ever listens to us.
Exactly.
Except other sound people. So we're like, yay!
Boom. Which is why this is a great thing. This
This is why
Mantis
we're not shutting
discussion
up,
is about, getting our words out and making it known.
I will say that this is something sound people across the board, we mentor, we share, we have tons of war stories, and I mean, not just production sound. I see it in live, I see it in studio.
Yeah.
We have a weekly lunch, and you're like, I'm sitting at the table with other sound people in the music world, and it's like, these are my heroes. You
Yeah.
know, these are the people. It's like I would love to be you one day. Like I'm not, but I dream. You know, like I mean, it's like the Jeff Emmerichs and the Al Schmitts, and
Yep.
you're like I can't believe I'm sitting at the table next to you
Yeah.
because you are you know, you listen to the albums, you watch the movies so
Yeah.
many times, and you're like, how
And
do
then
you do
you're
that? And
there.
you're a genius, and then you're at the table, and you're like, I don't know that I like feel like I belong. You know,
Yeah.
it's a thing that we all do because
Yep. Everybody does
we're
it.
constantly
Everybody does it.
seeking to, you know, or
Approval.
at least I am, not approval, but seeking to work on our craft and get better. And you're like, you know, and at the end of the day, it's like, oh, I never heard my sound that way. Oh my God, is my hearing all messed up? Like, should I just stop mixing because I didn't hear? Is it the room? Is it my headphones? Is it this? Am I just a bad? We go through that because
Yeah.
we're constantly. You know, some of us do, some of us don't. I don't know. I do. Where you know, and
I think the good ones do.
yeah, and it's
you
like,
have to be self-subjective and to ask yourself those questions. You don't grow if you don't.
no, and it's like, you know, it doesn't matter how many years you've been doing it. Like the night before
Yeah.
I start a shoot, I never sleep.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just
Yeah.
like you
Oh,
prepping,
God,
you're
no.
going through. I've prepped everything
up
for the
twice.
past week. It's on the truck. There's nothing I can do about it. Did I miss something?
Yeah,
You know, what am I
exactly.
going to do? with
Did
this?
I plug in the aux cable? Huh?
And it doesn't matter how many use it. That doesn't change for some of us. You know.
Yep.
It's like because you're constantly, and then you're at work or you're doing your thing, and then you're like, oh, we could do this, and you go home and you start tweaking something else, and on the
Yep.
weekends you're still working, and you're on when you're on the show.
Yep.
There's no real off time.
Yeah, you're right.
You know,
You're right.
because you're always
It's
like
so heavy. Yeah.
you're just like 2 or 3 months or however long the show is, or that was
Yeah.
the feature, but whatever. It's like you're just, and then there's like the
Filmmaking is immersive.
yeah.
So
it's
when
the
you're on a
prep,
show,
and it's all so much prep because
yeah.
once you're on set, you're like, okay, the train has left the station. We're just trying to keep it on the track, and
so it doesn't fall off.
Meanwhile, it's taking corners at like 200 miles an hour, and you're like, wee.
Yep.
You know?
I have a really good quote from a good friend of mine, Eric at Cannibal Industries, Eric Ballou. He says, "An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure."
so
and
much.
God, I try to say that every day.
And the thing is like you prep for all the information you know, but invariably you get to set. Oh,
And
by the
some
way, we're going to
changes.
do this. You're like,
Something's always going to change.
noted.
Yep. and that's the difference between a professional and a not professional.
Right.
The
How you roll
non-professionals,
with
they
it.
go, "What?" And they get, "Oh, well, you didn't talk to me about that. We didn't have a phone call about it." No, I'm not doing that. And they
Yeah.
get all worked up, and it's like, dude, you are no longer a filmmaker. You
No.
are now being a problem, and they don't want you. They don't want you around. You need
They-
to be part of the solution, not the problem.
Film crews, it's like all these different units, camera, sound, grip, electric, everything, and they're like little pods. They go off and they do their thing. They work cohesively together.
Yeah.
Especially when they work well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they're supposed to
When
be
they
off,
work
and it's
well.
sort of like little military units that go, oh, okay, we're going to send you out there. You're special ops. You're this, you're this, and then you're going to come back with more information. We want to take it. We're going to do something. But meanwhile, we're going to send you off. And
Yeah.
you have to be autonomous. You have to
Ready,
do your thing.
regroup.
Yeah, you're like, "Whee!" It's like a virus attacking
Yeah.
the body.
A plague.
You go after the white cells. I'll go after the red cells. And we'll kill them in the end.
Yep.
And you can write that script too. if
Yeah,
you want.
right,
Yeah, I'm
exactly.
sure that's a horror film Blumhouse will make.
Sounds like a Pixar movie in the making, right?
Probably, yeah, Inside Out.
Inside Out. Yep.
But it's like at the end of the day, it's like you got to be able to roll with it,
Yeah.
and adapt, because
Adapt.
that is the job, really. We get paid and hired and brought on based on whether or not they like us and what we know, and you pay for me for what you know, and you hope I don't have to use it all.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
in the end, you invariably do. But it's like you show up like, oh, now we have 3 cameras, or that camera's going to be up there. We're going to be so the whole plan. Okay, that's not going to
Yeah.
work. Okay,
Everything
all right,
we just
so
did for 30 minutes.
what,
Okay.
what do we have that we can make this work?
Yep, exactly.
And then you do that.
Quick thinking.
And then you make it work for the moment, and then hopefully it works for everything. And if it works and everybody likes it, you're like, okay, we're good. And then you can bring in more the next day. But it's constantly evolving, adapting, and learning, and just thinking outside the box. And that's the challenge.
Question time for you. And really quickly, Lindsay Castro says, "Hi, Sarah."
Hi.
All right. Guys, if you have any questions at home, please let us know. We're talking to Sara Evans right now, having a Mantis discussion. We'd love to get your feedback and your questions as well. Love to have you a part of the conversation. One of the questions I have is, what would you say is the path to becoming a mixer? Is it different for men and women?
I'd love to be able to say that the path is not different.
Okay.
Um,
This is a Mantis discussion. These topics get kind of tough sometimes.
um, and I think that the path is changing. I will say, years ago, maybe 2003, 2004, I think it was, we had a ladies in sound lunch over at Peggy Name's house.
Peggy Names.
And there were a lot of women there. When we went around the group and we're talking about how we all got into sound. And years later, talking with Susan Morchong, she reminded me, she's like, you know, one of the things I noted that day was all of the women who got into sound got into it because their boyfriends were mixers and they basically brought them on set and hired them, except for Susan and myself.
Interesting.
And that was, I guess, how it happened back then. And there are a lot of reasons that could be, was the case. And a lot of it has to do with, like, look, our union was incredibly racist and incredibly male back then. There were none. I mean, I think Sunny Meyer was the first, and I don't know what year she joined, but she was the first. But that also goes more to, you could talk about the sociological support and empowerment for women in engineering and science and math, and the fact that, like, you know, nobody bought me a 4-track to play with as a kid.
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
I got dolls,
Yeah.
which I didn't care about. So, you know, where it's like, you know, you look at that enrichment as it comes up, and, you know, the women that are drawn to that will still do that. Now, I think that has started to change with
Yeah.
the women, with the children of the 70s, which, you know, I'm on, but it's like, and later, it's like there's more empowerment and education, enrichment, and access for women then. So there's that part of it. And then there's just like the whole 50s, 60s, 70s mindset of, like, you know, women getting married, staying at home, popping out kids, not working, and all that. So, you know, times are changing who's getting in and how. And that is a amazingly wonderful thing. And I'm so happy that that's happening because, dude, we have, like, I can think of my top of maybe 8 mixers that are female in our union.
Right.
And maybe 3 female boom ops.
Mm-hmm.
And
A handful of utilities,
handful
maybe.
of utilities. And by the way, I can't think of any.
Sorry, Tree.
As far as I know, we don't have any Asian mixers, male or female,
Mhm.
in our union. I can think of 2 Asian boom ops in our union. We have, 3 African American mixers in our union, and 4? Okay, 4. Sorry if I don't know you. I only know who I know so far. And then there's, like, I think 5 African American boom ops in our union.
Yeah.
The numbers are horrifying.
Yeah.
And by the way, those are all men. On the African American and Asian, they're all men. So, you know,
How do we change these numbers better? How
we
do
have
we?
to recruit.
We have to
We
recruit.
straight up have to recruit.
Mhm.
And I noticed this a few years back.
We need to
when-
get more wives into sound. I'm kidding. That was a bad joke.
No, we
Mhm.
need to enrich. And men, you know, for a long time, people hire who they know, who looks like them, and who they like.
Yeah.
You have to step outside of your comfort box. And on top of that, a lot of the guys, there are a lot of good guys, been mentored by a lot of good guys. I have a lot of great male sound effects, but there are a lot of guys out there who just, you cannot work with women. You just, you don't have the skills. You know, I've been in some incredibly toxic and misogynistic work experiences over the
You know,
years.
honestly, I have too. To be
Yeah.
honest, even as a man, regardless of
Part of
the
the
man and women
culture, I
thing.
think, coming up from the filmmaking, and we've all heard the stories from the guys coming up in the 70s where they talk about getting in fights with the DP, and, you know, it sort of gets into
Oh yeah,
whose is
it was
bigger than yours.
dog eat dog. You got to pull your fists out and fight.
And it created sort of an abusive hazing
Yes, it did.
mentoring thing where it's like,
Yeah.
oh no, okay, so you just throw everything on the utility, and it's
Mhm.
like, you know, the utility nowadays is a different position than
Oh,
it was
yeah.
then. Nowadays, it's a key position.
Yeah, you almost need to know more than the sound mixer, or at least on
Well,
par.
First of all, you have to do exactly. You have to be able to do every job in the department
Yes,
and do it
true,
well at a
true.
moment's notice without all that. But
Yes.
you know, gone are the days where, like, you ran a duplex cable and, you know, sat on the follow and passed out a Comtech or 2, ran cable, and then, you know, played
And then-
guitar on the camera truck getting stoned all day. That is not what a
Exactly.
utility does anymore.
Yeah.
And it's just invaluable because your utility, depending on how good they are, can get you fired or can get you rehired.
Hmm. Exactly.
And then I think that whole culture of training that was abusive and horrifying got passed down. And thankfully, the guys who still practice that are mostly either retired or we all know about them.
Yeah.
But thankfully, the millennials, the younger generation, are coming in and they're way less tolerant of that and way
Well, I
more
think we have a different
aware.
mindset, you know?
Yeah.
We're not necessarily tainted by the years of being on set and that
Yeah.
negative energy that you're talking about. We're more of like, we have great ideas. We may not be experienced filmmakers, but we're filmmakers
Yeah.
nonetheless, and we have passion.
I mean, don't get me wrong.
There's
There
no
are
reason
a
to
lot
ever
of really
squash passion.
good people out there, and
Yeah.
I've been fortunate to work with good ones. But there are also some who just, whether it's the hazing or whether they just never had, respect and social skills to begin with.
Yeah.
They're out there.
I think that's one of the biggest things. I think that a lot of, since sound is one of those neglected categories on set, we all know what I'm talking about. I'm just going to leave it at that. I think that sometimes that negative energy that's thrown on our department also gets channeled towards the lower
Yeah, and then it
workers.
just gets dumped on.
Shit runs downhill, right?
Yeah.
That's the
If you
saying.
dump on the boom dumps on the utility, and then the boom and the mixer stop talking to each other, so they both start dumping the utility, and you're just like, I'm out.
But then you can have the exact opposite
Yeah.
of that, and instead of having a dictatorship, you can have a community in your department where you all watch the rehearsals together and you all make the decisions together. And
Right.
God,
Well,
isn't that a beautiful thing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I would always make all the decisions together, because at the end of the day, you are the
With
mixer,
respect,
you are
absolutely.
the key, and
Yes.
ultimately, the decisions are made differently based on different things. It depends.
Yes.
But
Mhm.
input is nice. But
That's what I
if
mean.
you've got an experienced mixer who's done all the jobs and done it today, like somebody who's like, oh, I utilitied in the 70s, like, okay, you haven't utilitied.
Mhm.
You haven't done the job because it's so completely different.
Yeah, it is.
nowadays.
It's technically
So
different.
it's just because in time management and multitasking is huge for utility.
Yeah.
Plus,
yeah.
plus the ability to be a solid first boom,
Mhm.
because you are. I mean, everything I utility on, I was out there booming everything. So
Mhm.
along with the first boom op, and as well as doing all the other.
And not only
work.
that, like you said, time management. You're doing 8 other things, and you're not on
And
set
prepping.
practicing
Right, and I just have
for
to
the
be able to
thing.
drop in and know.
Yeah, like, hey, come in here in 2 seconds and just know what to do.
And that's where you really have to have a well-functioning department, which is the hard thing. And when I stepped down to utility, and there were so many reasons to do that. Not all, most of them were personal actually, and had absolutely nothing to do with profession. It had to
Okay.
do with my life and what was going on at the time outside of work.
Okay.
But the key, it sort of gave me the ability to go, and then in all these different departments, I was always sort of grading and judging my mixer and boom, and seeing, nobody really knows.
Yeah, that's the
You
biggest
think
thing.
the guy's working, and you're like, oh, they know everything. They don't know everything.
Yep.
And
Smoke
you
and
learn what they
mirrors.
don't know. I mean, the other thing that I did was I I graded my boom ops, man. I'm like, oh, would I hire you? And some of that is based on whether or not they could boom.
Mhm.
Or how will they boom? And you learn. You get so good at when you boom next to somebody on the floor.
Yeah.
Like that's when you can really tell.
Yeah.
Mixer at the cart can't always tell.
No.
Because they just know what comes through their. They
Mhm.
can't see like what's being worked out on set.
Yeah.
And depending upon if they ever come to set or how much attention, some half of them are on Facebook or dating sites or whatever in between.
Pretty
They
much.
just like wake up to push the
Yeah.
button and mix.
I call them social media mixers.
Not all of them, but there's some that do. And
Mhm.
so you learn who's really good. You learn the strengths and weaknesses they have. You also learn how they treat their utilities.
Yep.
And the ones who are good at their job and good to their utilities are the ones that I'm like, okay, I'll hire you.
Yep.
And you also learn who can work with women and who can't.
My favorite boom operator that I ever worked with was Kerry Whites, and I saw him
Yeah,
watching.
he
So
checked in earlier.
shout out to Kerry. Man, I tell you that working with someone that knows his job, knows how to run a set, but is so kind, he's able to help you. Like, because I was a third, and I'm doing all these other things and working with harder mixers at the time, so I'm flustered.
And a boom op's got to protect the utility, man.
gotta
That's part of
protect
your
the
job too.
utility.
You don't throw your utility under the bus.
No, you help them.
You know that they're running around wiring 10 people. They've got
Mm-hmm.
22 Comtechs out. They're working out a video feed. The mixer's somewhere in, nowhere near set or whatever.
Yep.
And the boom op needs to find the spot, work all the shadows out for the utility. So when
Yes.
they walk in at the last second, he's like, okay, you go here.
You can be here and you can do
watch
this.
out for that.
Yep.
Watch out for that. Do this and that. And
Yep.
it doesn't matter that you both have been booming for however long, and
It's
you both
just
like
helping.
it's just that you weren't able to be there
Yep.
for the lighting part because you had to do the other part of your
Yep.
job.
It's
And
it's just a courtesy.
Yeah.
It's literally what it is. It's saying, hey, I don't want you to get boned because we are all one
Right.
one person.
And
We
you'll
are the sound
notice-
team.
You'll notice that the boom op, you work with good boom ops and boom ops who are not team players. And good boom ops, they don't bring out their utility as a second stick if there's not a good spot for them.
Yeah, exactly.
Like literally, they'll be like the Bixer can be going like, oh, I want a second stick, and the boom op will be like, no man, there's not a good place for them.
yeah, they can't.
Get it on the wire.
Yeah, you're going to cause
know.
more problems on set having that third
And then
there
the
than not.
non-team players, they'll set them up. They'll
Mm-hmm.
call them out because they want the second boom, but there's no good spot for them. They'll throw them in a bad spot, and then they'll blame you for not
Yeah,
getting it.
wondering why it's not good.
No, they'll just say, oh, you weren't paying attention or you did it wrong. And you know that that's not the case.
Yeah.
But the mixer's going to believe the boom op.
Yeah.
So, there's just like you learn a lot about people and personalities and
Yeah,
how-
and
how
who's
they-
really
yeah.
listening?
And it's a team department.
It
So
is.
and it's 3 people, man. So when that department doesn't work,
It's
nobody
a
wants
train
to,
wreck.
Yeah, and you hate going into work.
So let's get through we're going to go
Sure.
through a couple line fires on this one.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
guys,
yeah.
if you have any at home, let us know.
We can always do this again, man.
Absolutely.
There's
Well,
always
of
so much
course,
to
we're
talk
going to have
about.
you back here. I wanted to ask you, do you think that actors and actresses should wire themselves?
There are. My first thing is going to be. No, of course we should wire them, but there's a reality to the job, and the reality to the job is that a lot of actors have had really bad wiring experiences with other sound people, and you walk into that and you don't know what their experiences have been,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't know what's going on in their life, and maybe they want to wire themselves. So bedside manner's huge. I've certainly been in situations where I've been told to send the wire off, and if it's my first time on this show, I'll be like, let me walk it over there and introduce myself. And I'll go to the trailer and with costumes, I'll be like, let's just walk it over. And we'll walk it over and I'll go, hi, so-and-so, the actor. I'm the utility sound, we'd like to wire you. I understand you want it set off. Here it is, but if you don't mind and if you're open to it, welcome me in. And sometimes they'll let them in just because I'm female, because they have had a bad experience prior or whatever. There are other times where no, you're not gonna. I mean, I did a short film years ago called Zombie Prom with RuPaul in drag.
Huh?
We sent that wire off.
Yeah.
And Ru's like, nope, you're not wiring me. I've done the.
I'll take care of it.
It's built in,
Yeah.
into the construction of Charles becoming RuPaul.
Yeah.
And which feels so strange because he was never Charles. It was always Ru because it was always in
Method.
drag. And there's a zombie musical, La Grace. It was crazy. It was fun. But there are times where, and especially if you've been working on a show and it's established. And look, if it's season 7 and you're coming in and this is your first season and their 7th, don't start stupid fights.
Yep.
Yeah,
you don't come in being the new guy on the block.
They know what works.
Yep.
They've been doing it for 7 seasons. They have a way. If they don't want you to wire, work really closely with the costumers because I swear to God, they are your best friends. Or
Yes.
they can get you fired.
Yes.
But so don't be a dick.
Yep.
And,
to anyone, but
anyone.
especially to them.
and
Them in camera.
And it doesn't matter what the personality challenges are because there are tons of personalities on set. At the end of the day, the moment you lose your cool, it's so much harder to come back from that.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, nothing is personal. I mean, it shouldn't be. Sometimes it is, but it's all about the job.
Yep.
So how can you work this?
How do you take your personal life out of it
Try
and
to
just
get
do
your
your
hands on the
professional job?
costumes as early as you can. Talk to your costumers. Be like, hey, what are we doing here? What's this scene? What have we got? What are the materials? Can I get my hands on it? Can I see the day before so I can figure out how I'm going to wire it? And if they'll let you and not, and maybe you're walking into a situation where 1 and 2 where 1 and 2 didn't want to be, just costumes are going to handle them. Okay, great. I'll work on that. I'm not going to just come in, hi, I'm new, I'm going to wire you today. No.
Yeah.
That door's not even going to crack open.
Yep.
You come in, you're like, okay, let me take over wiring everybody else because we can establish that, and then I'll work with 1 and 2. I'll develop a relationship. I'll get them to, trust me. We're still going to send it off. Maybe we'll tweak it on a challenging costume. If it doesn't work, we'll come in and tweak it. And then plenty of times I'll be like, okay, can you run it underneath? And I tell them how they want to run it or underneath the Spanx. I'll be like, just come with it hanging out, and then I'll place it.
Yep.
And you just again, this is part of adapting.
Exactly.
This is part of adapting.
Adaptability is big
and working
in
the
sound.
situation. So yes, ideally we're always gonna. But once you develop a relationship with your actors and your costumers, and you know, you have to do what you do. And look, if talent is a half a mile away at base camp and we've got 3 cameras and 7 people talking on set, I'm not going to send my utility to base camp to wire them.
Thank you.
Because
Thank you. Did you
it's
hear that,
like,
everybody?
I
Did you
need
hear
you
that?
on set. It's
Yes.
like at that point.
Did you hear that? I need you on set.
I need a 4th person in my department who can only be at base camp, you know?
How do you stay healthy on set? This is a hard one.
I don't know that I do stay healthy on set.
Okay. Well, then why don't you tell us what it's like being on set and how, you know, what's it like?
Well, I mean, this is where being vegan works in my favor because I go to Crafty and like there was a beep in my ears.
Ignore that. Yeah,
Okay.
that was me.
So, and there'll be like, just like you go to craft stores and there'll just be like tables of stuff I can't eat because it's not vegan. So I'm like, and then you're like, okay, well I can have a bag of potato chips. You're like, I don't really want that.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
It's
Or
just
you
gonna
have some
crush
like
your
mixed
energy.
nuts or some seaweed snacks or oranges or whatever. And then you're like, well, I've had that for the past 5 days. And so you're like, you know, I always get breakfast and then I kind of pick at lunch or whatever, and there's occasional snacking. So I end up not eating a
Yeah.
lot, but, or you try to eat healthy because then catering is like, here's some steamed veggies for lunch and stuff, and it's healthy, but you've had it for 5 days. in
Yeah,
a row.
exactly.
Which is
Broccoli
nothing
stalks for
against,
5 days is tough.
Yeah, not dumping on catering at all. It's just, as we all know, even the best caterers, when you're on a show for 9 months, like the menu comes around a few times, and
Yeah.
you're like, you get bored with it, you know.
Exactly. Yep. Comes around
The food
a
could be
lot.
great, but when you eat it regularly,
Gets a little old.
depending on the budget they give them, that can happen more often or less often.
So what do you bring to set then
I
to
don't.
eat? You don't bring any snacks?
No,
No?
I'm like a squirrel. I have my mixer drawer on my cart, and it's like a little squirrel lives in there. You got Cliff Bars, you got some bags of nuts.
Good. Trail
some
mixes or whatever.
Yeah, I'm just like, you know, and then
Nibble foods.
Yeah, and you're just like, oh, okay, something so that when I'm starving and there's nothing, it's like, oh, okay, and you know, it's just calories to like get through, and then other than that, coffee. Like
Yeah,
my
coffee.
utility knows. Is
Yeah, you had a lot of that coffee. Better be
Yeah.
piping hot, Thomas.
No, or no, if it's hot out, I want it iced.
Yeah,
But it's fine.
exactly.
It's just black coffee, whatever. I just, you know, I need some of that or something, and a water occasionally, and you know, I don't know. And then you're sitting, and you know, as a utility, I run around a lot. So as a mixer, it's like sometimes I'm just, you know, I'm not quite like, you know, Ken Siegel who yo-yos and stuff, but every now and then I'll be like, I'd walk to set, and I go and I'm like, there's nothing wrong, absolutely nothing wrong. I just needed to walk.
Yeah.
I can't stand or sit at my cart.
Yeah.
I'll say, I'm going to Crafty, or I'm getting this coffee for
Just
myself.
doing a
because
lap.
I just need
Yeah.
to burn off
Burn
a
that
little.
energy.
Just you know, leg movement.
You need like a hamster wheel to get in next to the cart or something, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
What do you look for when crewing up a boom operator and a utility? This is for all of the
Right.
students that are coming up that are going to want to work with you, and that I don't think a lot of people understand when they get out of school. If you're an ENG mixer, you're not going to just jump in and start working as a sound mixer on a cart, working on a television show or a movie. You might get lucky, but it is not generally going to happen. You are going to work as a boom operator or a sound utility to
Right.
begin with.
Right, once you get in.
So what do these people need to know that think, well, of course I'm qualified, I went to school?
Okay, so I am going to repeat something here that Bill Dooley told me
Do it.
that needs to be said to a lot more people. Because I spent 2 years going to school for recording engineering, and what they teach you in school is that you're going to come out of school and sit in the chair. And that's just not happening.
No.
What schools are for is to teach you the language we speak on set. If somebody said patch bay to you, you wouldn't have a clue what that means. You wouldn't know signal flow, you wouldn't know this. Okay, so we're going to teach you what that means. And when I finished the program, and I told Bill, he's like, yeah, I'm done. He said, okay, good. That shows me that you can stick with something long enough to finish it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you stick around, we'll actually train you, and we'll teach you. Because there was no way you can sit in the chair. And I wish film schools did that. But mostly what they do is take your money.
A lot of them.
And I frankly think you're probably better off just... sorry, guys.
Bless you.
There's probably going to be a second one. They come in twos. But there are pros and there are cons. Everybody, you know, they teach you how to grip. They teach you to set a light stand. You're not going to make you a master of lighting, but they're going to teach you this does that and basic coverage and all that sort of thing.
The basics.
The basics. Basically, so you can walk on a set, and when somebody says, get me a C-stand and a sandbag, like you know what that, and you know what department to go to ask that, and who
Exactly.
to ask. You're not going to walk up to the key grip and ask that. You're going to walk up to, So, but it doesn't necessarily make you capable of heading a department right out
Yeah,
of the gate. It just
exactly.
doesn't. You're not. There's a lot more you need to learn. This is like basics. It's like getting your days for contract services is the minimum to get in the union. It doesn't make you. I mean, if you've been doing it for 20
Yeah.
years and you finally join the union,
You're
that's
not
a
going to
different
work
story.
on Wolverine 9
No,
just
but
because you got your union days.
in most cases,
You know what I mean? Sorry,
well,
that's what I like to
Wolverine 9, you might.
say. Avatar 4, well, yeah, maybe Wolverine 9.
Probably direct
because they're
to
on
video.
2.
It could be a Lifetime movie for all we know.
Exactly. It'll be like a YouTube original
It's not even
next
union
year.
by that point.
God.
So, so you've gotten the education. Now you need to get the training, and they're two very different things.
Right.
So, key
And you
thing,
only got the surface of the
there's-
education.
There's so much.
Because it
because
always grows.
The thing is, you're never out of school. That's the other thing Bill told me. He's like, you're never out of school. The moment you think you're out of school, you're done.
Done.
Because technology is always changing. But not only is it technology, that's like almost the least of it, is that each job we do is so different. Nothing prepared me for Westworld other than Westworld.
Yeah.
Because, okay, how are we going to do this?
Yeah.
I have a scene with a naked guy under a tree and a guy in a loincloth.
Yeah.
And we're in the coral pink sand dunes.
And rooms with just huge glass walls
Oh
everywhere.
yeah, that was the other thing.
Everywhere.
And there's like wide shots because this is the view of this, and it has to be a wire. How are we going to do this?
Yeah,
Where are we going to
exactly.
do this?
Where are we gonna
Where are
go?
we putting the microphones?
Where are the
How are we getting?
plants?
What
Where
are the
are everything?
challenges? And again, this is where you work with your departments. And in that one, hair mics. And absolutely learn how to do a really good hair mic. And most sound people don't know how to do them. Go talk to your hair department
Yeah.
because they know how to do it.
Love it.
And if they've
Love it.
done theater, if you've done theater, you know how to do a good one. When nothing else works.
Yep.
And
You gotta delegate that time.
where does the mic go? The mic goes where we can put it and where it sounds the best.
Yeah.
And sometimes where it sounds the best wins, and sometimes where it goes wins. And at the end of the day, a mic on an actor is better than no mic on an actor.
Right.
So, if you're like, you only have one spot, make it sound as good as you can. And if you're really good and think outside the box, you'll make that work.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Because it's, again, you have to capture, protect, and preserve the performance. And you can't do that if you don't have a microphone on your actor. If you can't get the performance, you can't get that.
Amazing.
And you have no idea how talented your post department can be. That you might think this is a lost cause. It might be enough that they could save it. At the very least, they might be able to, depending on the performance, because they will work. They will work. So I've got a lot of friends in post. I go visit them all the time, and I see how hard they work to capture a performance when it's, one of those performances that's just gut wrenching. I went to go visit Sherry Klein on a film that on an episode she does, and there's a, not going to name anything here. And there's a performance by the actor that was very emotional, as you do. We have those on all sets.
Yeah.
And you're like, there's no way the actor's going to want to ADR that. And that applies to so many films. Everybody's got one. You could, shooting one today.
Exactly.
Where you're like, oh my God, the talent was just in a car crash. His wife was shot, his child died, whatever, and he's got to pour out his guts.
Right.
We're not ADRing this.
No.
So you get it as good as you can, and you let post know what you had to deal with it. Shoot your Riri an email.
Mm-hmm.
Trust me, actor's not going to want to ADR it, and post is going to know that, and they're going to work so hard to save that as the trash truck goes by, guys.
It's garbage day. It's all good. Yeah. So I tell you what,
challenges.
let's close off with this. If you had to say one final word to students, what would you say?
I'll combine this because I never actually answered your last question.
Oh, okay. Yeah, please.
Try everything. Learn everything in your school that you can learn. Reach out to your professors because they're actually most likely working in our. I'm still friends with some of the people that trained me 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And now I go back and I speak at their events. But check yourself. Be humble. Know what you know. Have confidence in yourself if it's deserved. Always have a good attitude because I don't really. To me, I'm not probably going to be your first job. I'll just own that. I want you later on when you've got some time under the belt. But if I do get somebody who's completely green, then what I want from you is a good attitude. You are there to learn. And you're not just there to learn from me. You're there to learn from the boom up and everybody else on set who has something to bring to the table. So have a good attitude. Be a team player. Work well with others. Practice the art of being a duck. and let everything roll off your back, because if you don't master that, you are going to have a very short career, and it won't be good for you, because you cannot personalize those things, and it doesn't work. Be smart. And that's not just like your Mensa score or whatever. It's like, but always be searching for how we could do things, and ask questions, because if you don't ask, you can't learn, and we can't share our knowledge with you. Take direction well. Like if you come from reality, I would probably say you don't know how to boom. You know, you're probably used to the boom being fill for wires.
That's
and
it.
You may not, you may just have it out there as reference. That's not booming to me. I want you in there on the edge of frame, and boom is primary.
Booming reality or documentary and booming narrative,
No.
they're not even the same. Not even the same category.
Booming to me, your primary, my wires are my backups, and sometimes I never use them, and they're just there for ISOs to keep post happy in case they need to go for them. But to me, that's my primary. So if we're training you, and my lead boom ops tells you how to do something, or gives you a point, that's he's on the floor or she's on the floor with you. They're watching what you're doing. They're giving you that fill. I wouldn't have hired them if they weren't good.
Yeah.
So I would have a very strong boom op who is also good at training a utility, and we're gonna take the time to invest in you. Take the note.
Yeah.
Because you're getting the option to be trained by us. Like if somebody gives you that, don't waste it, because if we see that you don't value it, we'll get somebody else in.
Yeah.
So,
and even if you don't agree with it, accept it for the day and do what is asked of you.
And you can ask questions later.
And then move on later, and when you go home, you can say, you know what, I don't ever want to do it that way, and that's your opinion, but you need to be able to work with the crews.
Right.
And
the
work
thing
their
is,
way.
And even if we ask you to do something strange and you're like, well, that didn't make sense, we might have reasons for asking that you might not be privy to.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, there might be other things that we're dealing with, and we're just like, hey, do this for us, and we'll deal with it later. Trust your mixer, trust your boom op, because if they're good to you, then that's the thing. And we all mentor. We love it. So, somebody had a hand in training all of us.
Absolutely.
We passed it down in the craft. So, you get a little factions, who was trained by who. So if you come into our department and we're training you, that a lot of times ends into a very, lengthy relationship. Could outlast a lot of marriages. Your work marriage outlasts that,
Right.
Yeah, and then the other really thing is, like, if somebody gives me something, make sure you want to be in my department. Like, don't come be in my department if you really want to be in camera. I need you there.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not gonna, like, if you want to be in camera, go be in camera, man. Because I need somebody in my department who wants to do sound and is eager to learn and is part of that.
You'll know if
You'll
you
know.
are passionate about sound. There's just something it does.
Yeah, you just and the most important thing for people getting into the sound department in the beginning, outside of all of that, because listen. Like, literally, when you have your headphones on, listen.
Two
that's
ears,
the other thing.
one mouth.
I see sometimes kids out there booming with one hand or whatever, and I'm like, oh my God, you're not holding the pole right. It's one hand. You're lazy. You're not even looking at what you're doing.
Yeah.
You got you're not listening to what you're doing.
Yeah.
You have to hear when you put the mic in a certain place, and when the actor's on axis and off axis. You need to be able to hear that. That's how you boom. You're like, oh, that, okay, now let me follow that. And that's your technique.
Exactly.
If you're not listening to what's coming through your headphones, you probably don't belong in the sound department. If you're too concerned with, like, what you're seeing on the set and you're watching and not listening, you should probably go into camera or one of the other ones. If you can focus on the listening, and if that becomes your primary, then you belong in sound.
That's it. Sara, thank you so much for coming today and
Absolutely.
sharing your knowledge and your stories. And everyone at home, thank you so much for joining us for this Mantis discussion. Stay tuned. We have a special Vault Talk coming up. I got a cool toy in the mail from a good friend. His name is Sander. If you guys haven't seen this, this is the Boom Hanger. It's a product that goes on your vest to help you hold your boom if you have to make quick adjustments. Like you were saying, instead of putting it on your head or doing the one-hand hold, you can lean it on this, make your adjustments, and then pick up your pole again. So it is an ENG type tool. We're going to review it on the next Vault Talk. Thank you so much for joining us. Sara, thank you again.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Do it again.
We'll see you on the next one.
All right.
Take care.